Good afternoon, team. Again, this is our Worship Matters summer series, like book study series. We are, I think, up to chapter 5. We kind of took a few weeks off, not really, but you could call it that. But we're back. And so we're going to look at chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the last chapter in section 1, or part 1. Part 1 of this book deals with who we are, what it is that we are to be. And section 2, or part 2, deals with what it is we are to do. So we really want to get that order right. We want to make sure that we understand who we are to be before we talk about, well, what is it that we do as a worship leader. I remember hearing Louis Giglio talk about this at Passion one year. People got really upset. Well, what about the Bible? But it was so true, because here's the talk he gave. He said there were 3 chairs. And he said essentially, I won't go through the whole thing, but essentially so many times college students, young people, they want to say, well, they want to determine what it is they're going to do before they figure out who they are to be. And so chair 1 was, hey, I figure out who I am, and then I get over here to do this other stuff. And so that's why this is so important. There are 2 scriptures I want to read to you. And like I said, chapter 5 is short, but it hits pretty hard. I mean, y'all, this is really, really, it's not just serious stuff. It's really, really important. I can't say that much. I can't stress that enough. And I pray that this video is not too long for you to even, don't check out, like really focus in on what I'm saying. The first scripture is 2 Chronicles chapter 23, starting with verse 3. It says, "The God of Israel has spoken, the rock of Israel has said to me, when one rules justly over men, ruling in the fear of God, he dawns on them like the morning light, like the sun shining forth on a cloudless morning, like rain that makes grass to sprout forth from the earth." If you go back and you read that, you'll find out the person who's doing the shining, who's making the grass, who's like rain and making the grass grow, is actually the king. It's not talking about God. It's saying when the king rules justly, he rules in the fear of God, then his leadership causes his people to prosper. And then the second scripture, which is going to come up in this chapter, is 1 Timothy 4:12. "Let no one look down on you or despise you for your youth, but set for the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Those 2 things speak to this. Our self-governance, the way we govern ourselves. Before we endeavor to lead other people, if we, like it says here in 2 Samuel, if we lead ourselves well, kind of imagine yourself as king over your own life first, right? If our self-conduct, the way we lead our lives, if it's good, it's gonna cause the people under us to flourish, even as we're leading the congregation. All that to say this: it's really, really supremely important that we set an example for the believers in speech and conduct and love and faith and in purity. I'm going to read a couple of quotes out of this, just so you kind of know. This chapter, like I said, it hits pretty hard. For example, given the holiness of God, his jealousy for the church, and the preciousness of Christ's body, our behavior is dangerous and inexcusable. And he's talking about sexual impurity. There are few things as serious and destructive in the life of a leader as sexual impurity. The consequences are not only personally harmful, but publicly dishonoring to the name of Christ. And so what he does is he takes each one of those verses, those parts of the verse, and he talks about them in this chapter: love, life, faith, and purity, or not life, but faith and purity. An example under the faith section, he says, do you lose sleep over your finances, over your future? Or with love, he says, are those your attitudes after a worship service where the mix was bad and the vocalists were out of tune? And basically he was saying, is love for you patient and kind and humble and polite and thoughtful and forgiving and enduring? He's really inviting us to really, really think about who we are in private, because who we are in private affects so much of what happens on the platform. That's everything. And so we really are called to set an example for the believers, to set an example of a lifestyle of worship. This is probably getting long, but again, look, hey, y'all, this is really, 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 really important. What we say in front of the congregation is important, but also the words we use on blog posts, on church websites, articles, private conversations are equally as important. And then here's another one. It's not my songs that define my worship, it's my life. So if your marriage is struggling, if your children are rebelling, if you're viewing pornography, if you're easily angered, if your speech is foul, if you're engaged in a pattern of sin I haven't mentioned yet, get help now. And so, Bob Kauflin, he pulls no punches here. Why? Because this is really, really serious stuff. He says, if no one is aware of your sin, start by confessing it to those who can help you. One thing I like, though, that he does do in this chapter, It's not to make anybody feel bad, but it's to be really plain. The standard for leading worship isn't sinless perfection, but there has to be a lifestyle of godliness. He uses the word misrepresentation. And so ultimately the question I want to leave you with as you read this chapter is the simple thought. When I get on the platform and I sing or I play and people see me up on the stage, does my private life, is that a misrepresentation? Am I misrepresenting what my life with God is really like, how I feel about Jesus, the way I live in private? Like, is there incongruity, you know? And to the degree that there is, I love this. He says, is there anybody in your life who knows? Is there anybody in your life who can kind of speak to the way that you're conducting yourself in private? Somebody has to know, right? And that, because that's the way we receive mercy, and that's part of the way that God helps he brings healing into our lives. Again, it's hard hitting, but our lives really do matter. It is massively important. This is a good chapter. It's one to reread probably weekly. This is good stuff, y'all. So, hey, please take some time to read it, and I'll see you on Facebook.